Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Now, I bet you're probably wondering why my eyes look kind of a little Egyptian today. Well, it's because today we're going to go through another biblical story. But this one focuses on a man who God chose for a very important task long before he sent his son to earth. That man was Moses. Now, there have been many different tellings of the Exodus story, whether being stage, television, or movies. Now, when I used to go to church, I don't think, I was ever told of the Exodus story during my childhood, but there are a few things Exodus related that I remember. Like, for example, back in 2005, when I was part of, Kenny Hill's Church Academy, I helped my friend Shelly Terry put together Holy Moses. And at Musical Theater Village back in 2008, I performed in a show called Promised Land, as a taskmaster to be exact. Speaking of which, my friends at Musical Theater Village are doing Promised Land again this year, where I've been promoted from Taskmaster to Zara, the leader of the Taskmasters and Pharaoh's second in command. Now, because Promised Land is currently being performed, my subject for today happens to be a film that was given to us by DreamWorks way back in 1998, which happens to be an animated musical. And it also introduced me to the Exodus story in the first place. Released on December 18th, 1998, the movie is The Prince of Egypt. Now, let's get started. Egypt. Eons of years ago, Pharaoh Seti commands all male Hebrew babies to be drowned in the Nile River. A desperate mother, Yocheved, places her son in a basket and lets the Hebrew god guide it all the way along its way to the river. The basket is found by the queen, and Moses is brought up as a brother and to the heir of the throne, Ramesses. Years later, the brothers who grew up happily and wealthy are split by Moses' recognition of his true heritage and the suppressing system his brother is about to inherit, willing to carry it on. Fleeing from the city in despair, Moses finds himself being called by God. He is given the task of being a messenger in order to free the Hebrews and to lead them to a country where milk and honey flow. So, what are my thoughts on this movie? Well, to be honest, I didn't quite understand too much of it at first after I saw it in theaters years ago, but after learning more about the story in the Bible and watching the movie more often, I realized that it's a great movie now. But I'm going to explain some more information about it in my Mustang notes. Now, former Disney chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg had always wanted to do an animated adaptation of the Ten Commandments. While working for the Walt Disney Company, Katzenberg suggested the idea to Michael Eisner, but he refused. Oh well, their loss. The idea for the film was brought back from the formation of DreamWorks SKG in 1994, after the works of The Lion King was done. When Katzenberg's partners, Amblin Entertainment founder Steven Spielberg and music producer David Geffen, were meeting in Steven Spielberg's living room, Katzenberg recalls that Spielberg looked at him during the meeting and said, "You ought to do the Ten Commandments." The Prince of Egypt was written throughout the story process, beginning with a starting outline. Story supervisors Kelly Asbury and Lorna Cook led a team of 14 storyboard artists and writers as they sketched out the entire movie, sequence by sequence. Once the storyboards were approved, they were put into the Avid Media Composer digital editing system by editor Nick Fletcher to create a story reel, or animatic. The story reel allowed the filmmakers to view and edit the entire film in continuity before production began, and also helped the layout and animation departments understand what was happening in each sequence of the film. After casting of the voice talent concluded, dialogue recording sessions begun. For the film, the actors record individuality in the studio under guidance by one of the three directors. Two of them I remember, like one was Brenda Chapman and the other one is Simon Wells, which I might talk about some other time. Anyway, the voice tracks were to become the primary aspect as to which the animators built their performance, because DreamWorks was concerned about the theory accuracy. Jeffrey Katzenberg decided to call in biblical scholars, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim people, and Arab American leaders to help his film be more accurate and faithful to the original story. After previewing the developing film, all these leaders noted that the studio executives listened and responded to their ideas, and praised the studio for reaching out for comment from outside sources. Now, what do I have to say about the animation? Well, let me just say it like this. Art directors Kathy Altieri and Richard Chavez and production designer Derek Gogol led a team of 9 visual development artists in setting a visual style for the film that was a representative of the time and scale of the architectural style of ancient Egypt. Part of the process also included the research and collection of artwork from various artists like Claude Monet, as well as taking part in trips such as a 2-week travel across Egypt by the filmmakers before the film production began. Character designers Carter Goodrich, Carlos Grangal, and Nicholas Marlette worked on setting the design and overall look for the characters. Drawing on various inspirations for the widely known characters, the team of character designers worked on designs that had a more realistic feel to them than the usual animated characters up to that time. Both character design and art direction worked to set a definite distinction between the symmetrical, more angular look of the Egyptians versus the more organic, natural look of the Hebrews and their related environments. The background department, headed by supervisors Paul Lezane and Ron Lucas, oversaw a team of artists who were responsible for painting the sets, backdrops for the layouts. Within the film, approximately 934 hand-painted backgrounds were created. The animation team for Prince of Egypt included 350 artists for 34 different nations, which was primarily recruited both from Walt Disney Feature Animation, which had fallen under Katzenberg's auspices, at Walt Disney Company, and from Amblimation, a defunct division of Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. As Disney's character animators were grouped into teams by character. For example, Christophe Serrain, as the supervising animator of Older Moses, set the acting style of the character and assigned scenes to the team. Consideration was given to properly, depicting the, sometimes hard to pronounce, the feeling of the ancient Egyptians, Hebrews, and Nubians seen in the film. There are 1,192 scenes in the film, and 1,180 contain work done by the special effects department, which animates everything in an animated scene which is not a character, like blowing dust, wind, rainwater, shadows, etc. A blend of traditional animation and computer-generated imagery was used, in the depictions of the 10 plagues of Egypt and the parting of the Red Sea, which I've been told was the most difficult part of the film. The animated characters were digitally inked and painted using Cambridge Systems, Amino software system, and the compositing of the 2D and 3D elements was done using the exposure tool. The digital solution developed for DreamWorks by Silicon Graphics. My favorite parts of the animation happened to be the background paintings, along with Moses' hieroglyphic dream. While the plagues were awesome looking, even the deserts looked really cool, and I've been told they were inspired by the look of Death Valley here in California. Also, the burning bush was cool, and also the setting in Midian. And while the animation is awesome, and some parts of the story are a little different to how the Bible tells it, I should let everyone know that perhaps the best telling of the Exodus story belongs to the Ten Commandments from the 1950s. But I will say this. The Prince of Egypt is way better than that Exodus movie which was released last year. Ugh. Now, what are my thoughts on the songs? Now, before I get started with the songs, let me just say that the music was done by Hans Zimmer, which is awesome, and the songs, believe it or not, were written by Steven Schwartz. Yes! Now, the opening song, Deliverance, which is sung by God's children who are in slavery, this song does show the sympathy and suffering that they've been through for many centuries. Well, after Joseph had departed and a new Pharaoh took the throne and forced them to go into slavery. It also shows them pleading to God for them to be released and delivered to a new home. It's also a similar style to Bricks from Straw that my friends sing in Promised Land. Also to note, you see this shot right here? I should let you know that it might be the same, statue head that my friends use, for Promised Land, and that they also use for Joseph. Now, there isn't much that I have to say about the song All I Ever Wanted, but all I can say is, while Moses is singing it, he's saying that he's happy with his life in Pharaoh's palace, up until he discovers the truth about his life. The River Lullaby is a really sweet song, and while I do like Yocheved singing it, I like how Mirren sings it a bit better. It's kind of a similar style to Promised Land's Baby in a Basket song. Jethro's song Through Heaven's Eyes is a great song too. Mostly it plays out like a montage of Moses' life in Midian with Jethro's family up until he marries Zipporah. Playing with the Big Boys Now, sung by Steve Martin and Martin Short, plays out kind of like a villain song, even though Hotep and Hoi aren't exactly the villains of the film, and they're not as silly as the ministers in Promised Land. However, the song is pretty interesting. While Moses possesses God's magic within a shepherd's staff, which is the real deal, the priest just put on a show which is all smoke and mirrors, and it's very creepy and spine-tingling. Now, my favorite song in the film happens to be the Plague Song, sung by Moses and Ramesses. Now, unlike 10 Plagues Boogie from Promised Land, which is like a repeating song, this song is more fitting because while Moses performs God plagues on Egypt with frogs, flies, lice, animals dying, meteors falling, which is representing hail, along with locusts and people getting boils, it's mostly about Moses trying to get Ramesses to consider freeing the Hebrews even though Ramesses keeps refusing. But my other favorite song in the film is When You Believe, which is sung while Moses leads everyone out of Egypt to the Promised Land. I also love the use of Hebrew lyrics in the middle of the song, which I find very interesting. Also during the end credits, the song is sung by Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, which in my eyes is a great combination when they both sing this song. So, now that I'm done with, behind the scenes, animation, and songs, let's talk about the characters and their voice actors who brought them to life. Now, our main character and God Deliverer, Moses, is voiced by Val Kilmer, who you know from films like Top Gun. And also he had a cameo role in Disney's Planes. And let's not forget the awful Delgo film. Kilmer also provides the voice of God. Now, I love Bel's performance as each of them. His performance as Moses kind of starts out in a bit of a selfish, princely attitude, and looks out for his stepbrother Ramesses, but after he discovers the truth about his origins, he feels confused, but then he becomes a wise leader who uses God's miracles through a shepherd's staff. And also, God does play out as an important role in this film. He doesn't appear physically, but he has a few different forms in this movie. When we first see God, he starts out as a burning bush, who assigns Moses to free his people from slavery. God also appears as a fire cyclone at the Red Sea, in order to buy Moses and the others some time to cross the Red Sea. Moses' stepbrother Ramesses is voiced by Ralph Fiennes, and, well, this was a time before Warner Brothers hired him as He Who Must Not Be Named. And it was also a time before Aardman had him in Curse of the Were Rabbit, another one of my favorite Halloween films. Now, on one hand, I like Ramesses for acting like a supportive brother in the beginning, but on the other hand, I don't like him because when Moses returns to Egypt and asks him to free the Hebrews, Ramesses is just revealed to be a stubborn, power-hungry jerk, saying that he's the morning and the evening star. Moses' wife Zipporah is voiced by Michelle Pfeiffer, whom I remember from films like Hairspray and Tim Burton's Dark Shadows. She's the oldest out of Jethro's daughters. Now, unlike in Promised Land, where she has 6 sisters, here she has 3 sisters. Anyway, Zipporah is a great character too. I mean, she starts out as like a headstrong girl who seems to have a Jasmine personality, but underneath it all, after Moses technically helped her escape Egypt, she grows on him. She's also tough, strong, and supportive to Moses. Next up is Moses' sister and my favorite character in the Exodus story, Miriam, voiced by Sandra Bullock, who will appear in the upcoming Minions movie this summer. Now, the reason why I love Miriam is because she stands by the Nile keeping an eye on Moses' basket, making sure he's safe. Plus, she keeps faith in Moses when she and Moses meet again as an adult. Next we have Moses' brother Aaron, voiced by Jeff Goldblum, who was in films like Jurassic Park and Independence Day. Now, in the Bible, Aaron does help Moses speak to Pharaoh, but here, I guess I decided to drop that. Now, to be honest, I didn't quite recognize Jeff's performance as Aaron because he sounded a little bit different from his past roles, but overall, Aaron's an okay character. Next we have Pharaoh Seti, the first Pharaoh in the movie, voiced by Patrick Stewart. Despite his cowardice towards the Hebrew slaves, he's shown to treat Moses and Ramesses with care and love. The high priest of Midian, Jethro, is voiced by Danny Glover, who's been in, well, films like Alpha and Omega, and he was President of the United States in that real destructive movie, which, thank God, didn't come true, 2012. Anyway, I feel like Danny's role as Jethro is perfect, because his voice sounds like everything a priest in a church should sound. And now the last character I should talk about is Queen Turia, voiced by Helen Mirren. Now, I'm going to be frank here. In the Bible, it was Princess Nefertiti who adopted Moses and asked Miriam to find a nurse to help raise Moses until he was ready to manage. Here, however, it was changed to Turia adopting Moses without finding a nurse at all. But anyway, despite that big change, I felt like that Turia was a really sweet woman to raise someone like Moses. Now it's time for my final word to this movie. Overall, The Prince of Egypt is a spectacular movie. It sticks pretty close to the Bible, mostly. It's powerful and emotional. The songs by Stephen Schwartz are fantastic. The characters are all memorable, and the animation is just outstanding. I give this film the highest rating of 100%. Now, before I go, I have a favor to all of you watching this review. If you want to see Promised Land being performed at Musical Theater Village, just go to this website below for information on tickets. But be warned, you have until March 15th to see it. But anyway, until then, be sure to join me next time for my next blog. Mustang Power!